Good morning to everyone assembled in this online mode for the national webinar on 100 years of Communist Party. I wholeheartedly welcome the great academician and academician from Dean, Faculty of Arts, Annamalai University, and I welcome today's resource person, Dr. K. Senthil Kumar, our own faculty member and alumni, and I welcome all the participants, that means whatever the colleagues, research scholars, and the scholars from various parts of India. I welcome one and all. And now I invite the Dean of Faculty of Arts to speak some words about our national webinar. Thank you, sir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Subramanian. Distinguished resource persons and fellow participants. I should first congratulate Dr. Subramanian and his team for organizing this webinar on the very important topic of 100 years of Chinese Communist Party rule. Even a few years ago, it was unthinkable that the distinguished economist, American economist Tyler Cowen would write in his famous blog called the Marginal Revolution blog that, and I quote, "The Chinese Communist Party is the most important organization in the world today," unquote. The Economist magazine carried, there was a special issue of the Economist magazine, a series of articles on the track record of 100 years of CCP rule. And again, I quote from one of the articles, "Globalization was to have changed China. Instead, China changed globalization," unquote. Such has been the rise of China. Japan was expected to have been the world's economic superpower rivaling USA. Instead, China today is the second largest economic power. Very soon it's going to be the largest economy. Exporting powerhouse. It improved the standard of living of the people tremendously. And it even made enormous strides in science and technology, in education. In fact, Britain is importing Chinese mathematics books as it is, without making any, just English versions of China's mathematics books. They say they're far better than any mathematics textbooks, school textbooks printed in the USA. Such has been the rise of China, which was unthinkable even 10 years ago. This kind of, status of China in the global economy. So it is very, very important that we should discuss the implications of China's position in the world today. I will just end with one observation. The American scholar of China, Michael Pulsman or somebody, I'm sorry, I don't remember the second name. He wrote a book called The 100-Year Marathon. The 100-Year Marathon. The Chinese had a plan that by 2049, they should be the leading economic and military power in the world. And they should preside over the destinies of all other countries. The writer calls it the 100-year marathon, and the end point was 2049. But even by 2021, the American economist Tyler Cowen could say CCP is the most important organization in the world today. So they seem to have achieved the 100-year marathon more than well before the goalpost of 2049. Therefore, again, I congratulate Dr. Subramanian for organizing this webinar. Very distinguished resource persons are there, and all the participants. I'm certain you will have a very, very enriching sessions. So, Dr. Subramanian, thank you very much. And now I hand over the floor to Dr. Subramanian and his team. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. On behalf of Department of Political Science and Public Administration, we wholeheartedly thank Dr. Ramagopal, the Dean Faculty of Arts, Annamalai University. In the contemporary
and the Professor of Economics, madam.
Definitely, sir, Professor of Economics.
Yes, yeah.
In the contemporary age, a political party serves the people for 100 years. It's a phenomenal achievement which must be celebrated. In the part of its centennial celebration, the Department of Political Science and Public Administration, Annamalai University, is organizing a two-day webinar on 100 years of Communist Party of China. The first resource person for this first session is Dr. K. Sindil Kumar, Associate Professor, Department of Politics and Public Administration, Annamalai University. Sir is deputed staff from our department, Annamalai University. Dr. Sindil Kumar is a known resource person in the field of international politics. Sir has delivered many special lectures and has published many research articles in the field of international politics. Sir is going to give a lecture on withering away of state, bellwethership and strategies in PRC. Sir, once again, we welcome you to this webinar. Now it's over to Dr. Sindil Kumar.
Sir, sound. இல்ல இன்னும் கேட்கல சார்.
அவருடைய வாய்ஸ் கேஎஸ் சாரோட வாய்ஸ்.
இல்ல சார் கேட்கல சார். ஹெட்செட் கைட்டுக்கு ட்ரை பண்ணுங்க.
ஆமா சார், G4. எங்கடா வர்றாரு? புரியல.
இல்ல சார் வரல. கொஞ்சம் சவுண்ட் வந்தது. ஹெட்செட் இல்லாம ட்ரை பண்ணுங்க.
ஹெட்செட் இல்லாம பேசணும்.
Good morning, everybody.
கேக்குது சார்.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Oh, fine. Fantastic. Some technical error was there. That is why I could not connect with video. So, most respected, the Dean Faculty of Arts, of the esteemed institution, respected head of the Department of Political Science and Public Administration, and dear colleagues of the department, faculty members of Annamalai University and other institutions and colleges, deployed staffs, PhD scholars and MPhil scholars, and my dear student friends. It is indeed a great moment for me to hear academic words from my most favorite Professor and Dean, Dr. Ram Gopal sir, of uttering different topics written by Taylor Cowan. And I feel very much happy of hearing that he has also subscribed for the Economist magazine, which is very much inspiring for us. Since from the studenthood, from 1996 onwards, we were grown up with the lectures and the speeches as advised and advocated by our eminent founder of the department, Professor Dr. Shanmugam, Dr. Bhaskaran, who always advised us to hear the lectures and speeches of Dr. Yelongo and Dr. Ram Gopal. And in the year 1999, we as a PhD scholar attended one research methodology workshop, and in which a number of eminent economists they expressed their views related with the data collection, report writing, statement of problem, in which we found wonderful lecture by number of economics professors in the Department of Economics, Annamalai University. So I myself and also number of professors, associate professors and assistant professors at the level, we were very much inspired of the professors of economics department, sir. So kudos to you. And I feel very much happy to be a resource person of this wonderful topic, 100 years of Chinese Communist Party. And for the past 6 or 7 years, I am being with this topic. And in the year 2015 to 16, I wrote an article related with the South China Sea dispute, which was published in the renowned journal. And I consider it as a milestone in my academic career. And Professor Ram Gopal mentioned about the book, The 100 Year of Marathon. It was written by Michael Pillsbury. And I had a good read before 8 months back. And it is a fantastic book. And it is also commented by the Wall Street Journal that the Pillsbury is correct to assert that China constitutes by far the biggest national challenge to America's position in the world today. And this is what the comment made by the Wall Street Journal. And very fantastic read. And coming to the topic, and actually I have prepared a PPT, but due to the technical error, I could not present myself. And after the session, I will forward the PPT to the head of the department for the sake of academic comment. So withering away of state, I have coined the topic for this national webinar. And withering away of state, in the sense that is the ultimate motto of Das Kapital, written by Karl Marx, one of the fantastic philosopher of the 20th century and the best ideology in this world. But it is considered as a utopian faith, because without the prevalence or the existence of the state, and there is no government at all, and there is no welfare at all, and who will unleash the welfare policies towards the people, and who cares about the welfare of the people, who makes policies. So the state, as such mentioned by Hobbes in his celebrated work Leviathan, in which he said that the state is a monster. So it is not at all the withering away of state, but it is to make the state as a world state which can rule over the nations of the world, as such ruled over by the United States of America. And of course, a number of capitalists consider the ultimate motto of Marx, Das Kapital, and ultimate motto of the ideology of communism as withering away of state, as utopian faith, and which cannot be implemented at all. And this is one among the research query which I frame. And definitely we can say that the state is considered as a contrivance, but Marx, in his ideology, in his Das Kapital, he considered that the state is an instrument or contrivance which is used and misused by the vested interest in a particular nation. And another research query, before getting entered into the topic, the shrinking globe and internationalism, and the thesis, it has also got impact upon the emerging China because of the social media, the communication and the information technological development. Even in China, the social media and other blocks, it is being censored. Power, authority, and influence, as mentioned by Robert Dahl in his book, a leading political scientist. And the world nation, the world consists of 195 nations, which has to be ruled over by one nation that is ruled now at present in the 21st century. United States of America is ruling over all the nations of the world, and China is competing with the United States of America. And at last but not least, interdependence and intradependence. That is also a research query. Interdependence in the sense, before 200 or 300 years back, China is an isolated nation or isolated economy. And the isolated economy was dismantled and obliterated by so many Western nations, including Germany, Russia, Britain in a major manner. So these are all some of the research queries I have framed. And the books which you have to devote to have an in-depth study upon the 100 years of China's Communist Party, we have to have a reading of a history of the Peloponnesian War written by Thucydides, Clashes of Civilization and the Remaking of World Order, Huntington, an outline of world history by H.G. Wells, and From the Ruins of Empire written by Pankaj Mishra, and another book, Critic of Pure Reason, written by Kant, Dollar Diplomacy in Tamil, written by Raghavan, and the writings of Srinath Raghavan, the best scholar who has got a PhD in King's College, Britain. And also we should have a read upon the Kaudilya's Arthashastra. And also some thesis and a hypothesis for your thinking process. I'll just cover within 5 minutes. The American involvement in shaping and reshaping the international order. And you know very well that in the aftermath of the First World War, which was ended in the year 1918, that is 1914 to 1918. And in the 1919, there is a Treaty of Versailles. The role of America was established in the international order. And during the World War II, which happened between the 1939 to 1945, and the establishment of United Nations Organization, and in the 1956 Suez Canal crisis, 1970s Henry Kissinger visit to People's Republic of China, 1980s, end of the 1980s or initial part of the 1970s, it is Afghan crisis and Gulf War, and 2001 it is United States of America bombarded, 2008 financial crisis, and 2019 Corona. Almost in all these international and national events, we can observe and scrutinize the role of United States of America in shaping and reshaping the world order. And in the recent past, one president of Haiti, he was murdered or killed. And immediately people of Haiti, they thronged the embassy of United States of America to seek help from United States of America for protecting the national security of Haiti. And also that portrayal of leaders, people and students in Pakistan, they consider Gandhi as a radicalist. And people in India, they consider Jinnah as a terrorist. Okay, this is what the irony or controversy. And it is also having the impact upon the domestic policies and as well as international policy. And role of media, the colonialistic past of a particular country, and one-upmanship in the international order, the domestic politics of a particular country, and the global society. So all these issues and the topics we have to consider in our mind when we scrutinize upon the Chinese Communist Party. So on July 1st, 2021, China celebrated the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Chinese Communist Party. And in the year 1949, it is Mao Zedong who has given a fantastic speech in the Tiananmen Square, where the place is most popular and unpopular because thousands of Chinese students were killed in the year 1989 when they raised slogans against communism and when they fought for the establishment of democratic governance. A number of students in 1970s, they got educated in United States of America and Western nations, and they returned back to China for the sake of enjoying the liberty for which the communism, the ideology of communist China, they had made a foot stop. And the famous statement, unpopular statement made by Xi Jinping, the present president of PRC. And particularly, I quote that to realize national rejuvenation, the party united and led the Chinese people in fighting bloody battles with unyielding determination, achieving great success in the new democratic revolution, he declared. And Xi's catchphrase of national rejuvenation is thus grafted onto the bones of the CCP's earliest history. And the exact words that clarion call made by Chinese President Xi Jinping, I quote, to put an end to all the unequal treaties imposed on our country by foreign powers and all the privileges that imperialist powers enjoyed in China. And he has a stern warning for today's powers as well. The Chinese people will absolutely not allow any foreign force to bully, oppress, or enslave us, and anyone who attempts to do so will face broken heads and bloodshed in front of the iron great wall of the 1.4 billion Chinese people. And this is what a drastic statement uttered by the present president of PRC, Xi Jinping. And a number of international scholars consider Xi Jinping as a Hitler of the world because he's trying to capture all the nations of the world. He just wanted to create an empire, which I cover in the third part of my session. And in this session, I'll just categorize my lecture in three parts. Communism, 100 years of communism, communism as an ideology, communism in practice, and communism as a power. And at last, the fourth part of my speech, it concludes with my observations and perceptions after my limited reading. So definitely in the 20th century, we must understand the major events which shaped and reshaped the international order. And as I said earlier, that world consists of 105 nations And most of the almost 90 majority of the countries are following the democratic type of governance in which people enjoys the liberty, equality, and fraternity, which was a clarion call slanted as a slogan in the French Revolution, which happened in the year 1789. And the words, famous words coined by Rousseau and Voltaire. Voltaire, who has made the statement that if there is no God, I will create a new one. So liberty, equality, and fraternity was made as a famous coinage by Rousseau and Voltaire, and almost it has been incorporated in all the constitutions of the nations of the world. And the First World War happened between 1914 to 1918, 1939 to 1945, Second World War, 1945 establishment of United Nations Organization, 1956 it is a Suez crisis, and 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. All these crises, the unipolar world, bipolar world, and now in the 21st century, it is known to be, the world order is known to be as multipolar. So the bipolar system, it existed between 1945 to 1991, the year in which there was a disintegration of Soviet Union, which was splitted into 15 states, because there is a provision in the Soviet constitution that if any state of Soviet Union wants to secede from the Union, definitely it may. So the split of Soviet Union, it has caused a dastardly impact upon the international order. And the aftermath of the 1991, that is the Soviet disintegration, the world order has become unipolar, in which United States of America has enjoyed all the benefits. It has exercised all the benefits, all the freedom, which it has also enjoyed in the past. So the unipolar, Eurocentric international order, it changed into bipolar from 1945 to 1991, and from in the aftermath of Soviet integration, 1991 to 2001, that is the initial part of the 21st century, it is known to be as a unipolar, and now it has got a multipolar. And the world system, the world order, it is also facing fiasco, its wrath. It is only because of the non-establishment of world government, which the Chinese are trying to do so. The world government or world empire or empire building process as such made in the historical past by Alexander of Macedonia and also Ashoka, the greatest king of India. So such kind of empire, the Chinese Communist Party, they are intended to establish this kind of governance. And this is what my prediction and my perception, on the basis of which I will just deliver my own things. So communism as an ideology. And among the nations of the world in the 21st century, 195 nations, there are some 3 countries even now today, right now today morning, the socialist country Cuba, and there was a uprising against the Supremo or leader of Cuba. Once it was ruled by Fidel Castro, the greatest communist or socialist. And coming to the ideology of communism. So all history is nothing but history of class struggles. This is what the perception or thesis on the basis of which the entire ideology stands. So the class struggles, it has widened and widening the gap of inequality between the vested interest and poor communities. As long as inequality prevails in this world, definitely issues are there. And as long as issues are there in a particular nation, politics is the most essential instrument in order to curb out the menace or issues. And according to Karl Marx, the politics is unnecessary. And the state is known to be as an exploitative instrument which is in the hands of the vested interest particularly in the hands of the business class people. The business class people, they are highly helped by none other than bureaucrats. So we have to crush the business class, we have to crush the bureaucracy, and the nation has to be ruled over by the proletariat revolution. The workers has to rule over a particular nation for a short span of time until the distribution of land and other resources to all the people in equal manner. So when people has got all the resources equal distribution of all the resources, and in the aftermath of that, there will not be any issues, and there is no need of politics, there is no need of state, there is no need of government, and people will enjoy all the resources as such enjoyed in the primitive era. So Karl Marx was of the opinion that in the primitive era, or the primordial stage, or in the age of antiquity, socialism prevailed. Socialism or communism prevailed, and the same stage has to be retrieved in the modern era. And this is what the thesis and antithesis of Karl Marx. And egalitarian society, that is the aim, in which people will get all the resources equally, because 1% of the population of the entire world are exercising and enjoying the 99% of the world resources. And each and every person in this world, they have to get their own share. And that is what known to be as egalitarian society or equal society. Social justice or equality, which is mentioned also in the Indian Constitution and American Constitution, it is not on par with egalitarian society. It is providing the equal kind of opportunities to all the people, regardless of caste, creed, color, religion, or other factors. So it differs. Egalitarian society or equal society, it differs from equality that is mentioned in the Constitution, various constitutions of the nations of the world. So, of course, Karl Marx, he has drawn the ideology of the socialism from Robert Owen. And Robert Owen, he has drawn the concept of ideology of socialism from Hegel, who has framed the thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. And Hegel, the German philosopher, drawn the concept of socialism from Plato. And Plato is known to be the father of all kind of totalitarianism, including socialism or communism, fascism, Nazism, or totalitarian revolution like this. So Plato, Owen, Hegel, Marx, Lenin, Mao, Stalin, and others. So they're all known to be as totalitarians. And when we search or scrutinize upon the annals of the world history, nowhere in the world history we could witness a nation which has implemented equality as its ideology, and nowhere in the annals of the world history communism won as the ideology or as a type of governance. And Marx also mentioned about the exploitation of resources. He has mentioned about the human exploitation, sexual exploitation, resource exploitation, mind exploitation. And he has also mentioned about the proletariat revolution and ultimately stateless society, which is considered as an utopian fate. And when we scrutinize upon whether any nation which follows the communist ideology or socialist ideology, whether they followed the communist ideology at the economical level, it is not at all found in the annals of the world history. Those nations which heralds itself as a communist nations or socialist nations, some nations in South America or Latin America, China, Cuba, and some other countries, Russia including. So they are following the communist ideology at economical level and not at all, at the political level and not at all at the economical level. And this is what the observation of most number of scholars who has written articles on the Chinese Communist Party. So let me concentrate to the next part of the session, communism in practice. So before understanding the communism in practice in China, China was, let me go for some historical background of understanding the history of People's Republic of China. So totally there were 11 dynasties which ruled over China. And the last dynasty which ruled over China is the Manchu dynasty until 1911. That is the initial part of the 20th century. So in the aftermath of 1911, the Chinese or the country of China is known to be ruled over by War of Lords. War of Lords mentioned by the famous author Michael Pillsbury and also Henry Kissinger. And he has also mentioned that the War of Lords era, because number of military generals, they captured the regions, most parts and regions of PRC, they ruled over. And in the end of the 19th century, and mostly we can say that the middle part of the 19th century, that is 1840s, and there was a famous war called Opium War. The most of the Western nations, Britain and Russia, Germany, France, and other countries, they entered into China for the sake of the policies of colonialism and imperialism, and they captured almost all the harbors of China. And the government of China could not tackle over the entry of Western powers, but the Chinese, they fought against the Western powers, the revolution in the 19th century, which is known to be as a Boxer Rebellion. Boxer Rebellion, and a number of other rebellions were also fought by the local people of China in order to make a put stop against the entry of Western powers. And major parts of China were ravaged by the Western powers. We can say that the Western powers entry, it has ravaged almost all the parts of the PRC. And in the due course, the initial part of the 20th century, after the establishment of the Chinese Communist Party in the year 1921, and there was a war waged between the yet another party, which is known to be Kuomintang Party. Okay, Kuomintang Party, which is also otherwise called as Nationalist Party, and there was a heavy fight between the Kuomintang Party and the Communist Party, which was established in the year 1921. And in 1931, can you please unmute? Is it audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So I think I'm hearing some music. Okay. So Mao's revolution and Mao's establishment of a power, which is known as a Cultural Revolution, established the communist power in the year 1949. And under the Mao regime, there were so many policies followed by Mao Zedong. It is by bullets and not by ballots. That is the exact coinage of Mao. And he has introduced so many policies like Great Leap Forward, in which the combination or the peasant uprising, which happened in the Cultural Revolution, as like New Deal policy, which was introduced in the United States of America in 1930s. And Mao gradually introduced a policy of 100 flowers criticism. That is, there were so many people of China, they raised the hue and cry against the communist rule. And they expressed their own grievances against Mao's regime. And Mao introduced a 100 flowers policy. 100 flowers policy in the sense people may express their own anguishness even against the government. People are having the power to criticize against the government. And in the due course of the introduction of 100 flowers policy under the leadership of Mao, there were so many criticism leveled against Mao's regime, and immediately that policy was also withdrawn. And Mao introduced a cultural revolution in the year 1966, And because of this Cultural Revolution, he has won against Chiang Kai-shek, who is the leader of Nationalist Party or Kuomintang Party. Before, the predecessor of Kuomintang Party was Sun Yat-sen, the great leader of China. And once this Nationalist Party of China and the Communist Party of China, they combined with one another in order to race against the Japanese invasion. And Mao also introduced the Communist Party of China as a leading party, and in which some 90 million people are now the members of Communist Party of China. And he has also introduced a Chinese military commission. And until his death, China was not at all developed. This is what the observation made by a number of scholars. And in the aftermath of the demise of Mao Zedong, and another leader emerged, Deng Xiaoping. He has introduced liberalization policy like the Glasnost and the Perestroika, which was introduced by none other than Gorbachev, for which he received the Nobel Prize. And Deng Xiaoping, he was well received and welcomed by United States of America. And during his period only, the people who got educated from United States of America and Britain and other Western countries, they raised their slogans against the Communist Party. And the famous and unfamous 1989 Tiananmen Revolution, in which thousands of people were killed and massacred, like Jallianwala Bagh massacre in India, because there is no place to escape. And that is a black spot of Chinese regime under Deng Xiaoping. And in the aftermath of Deng Xiaoping, it is the leader now who is ruling, Xi Jinping, who is involved in empire building process, and China as a power, communism as a power. So communism as a power.
இந்தாம்மா ப்ரௌன் ஷீட் தானம்மா இது
So I'm almost at the last session of the lecture, communism as a power. So we had seen about communism as an ideology, communism in practice, and now we are going to see communism as a power. And in the recently published article in the Hindu, almost 90 crores of Chinese people, they were relieved out from the absolute poverty. And in Sunday, in Hindu paper, there is an article published. In number of aspects, the authoritarian regimes, they are performing and they are far ahead than the so-called democratic nations. China now is 11 trillion economy. And China as a communist power, and the Chinese communist power for the past these 100 years, which was gradually made up as a strong nation, second largest economy, as mentioned by our Dean Faculty of Arts. It is building the One Belt Road, in which 60 to 100 nations are coming across that maritime Silk Road, and in which the expenditure of One Belt Road was around 1 trillion to 8 trillion. And when we look upon the issues in which China faced the wrath of other countries like Japan, Australia, or Philippines, or Vietnam, a number of other littoral nations in the South China dispute. And China even yesterday, it has blocked a ship of warship of United States of America, making itself as trying to make itself as a sole superpower on par with the United States of America. The Senkaku issue is yet another issue, Senkaku or Diaoyu issue, which is a no-man's land between China and Japan. And it is having its own domination, for which Japan raised its voice against the Chinese occupation. Senkaku or Diaoyu, for which United States of America is also supporting. And that is why they formed their own alliances, which is called Quad. in which Australia is also a member. And South China Sea is yet another issue in which communism as a power, it is showing its hegemony not only in land, it is also showing its hegemonic power in the sea also. So the South China issue or sea has got a 3 trillion trade per year. And it is blocking, China is blocking the ships of a number of countries, or it is not at all allowing other countries, including United States of America, to enter to South China. And the countries, both Western countries and Eastern countries, they are fearing upon the power of PRC. And China also started Asian Investment Infrastructure Bank in the year 2016, in which the Western powers also, they become members, founding members of the bank, which is competing with the International Monetary Fund and the World Trade Organization. So AIIB, that is also a major bank or financing institutions which is helping and unleashing loans to number of countries. And it another theory in which China proves itself as a sole superpower is string of pearl theory. The string of pearl theory is nothing but China is establishing itself around the country of India, Indian nation, Indian subcontinent, Bangladesh or Nepal or Tibet or Sri Lanka. Even recently, Sri Lanka, Tamil signboards or Indian signboards were removed in the harbors, and we could find Mandarin signboards in the Sri Lankan harbors. So slowly, gradually, they are building their own empire in the neighbor nations of India. That is what called string of pearl theory. And this is a recent theory. Before this, Mao, he has made a five-finger theory in the end of 1940s. And five-finger theory in the sense Nepal, Bhutan, and Sikkim, Ladakh, and Arunachal Pradesh. So these 5 territories should be under the hands of the Chinese empire, so that if these 5 territories are under the Chinese empire, definitely they can rule over the entire subcontinent. So the five-finger theory, it was not made in the 21st century. It was made in the year 1949. That is the end of 1940s. And even in Arctic land also, they are going to build Polar Silk Road. And global supremacy, the 21st century, we could witness the evolution of Chinese empire, the impact, influence, authority, power of Chinese empire upon the nations of the world. And China and the United States of America, when we compare with one another, definitely we could say that apart from keeping away the democratic type of governance, the communist nation is performing very well, and it is being far ahead when compared with other nations. And as I said earlier, that some 90 crores of people, they are relieved out of the absolute poverty, and this itself shows that compared with the democratic type of governance, even the authoritative type of governance is far better. And India, China, and Pakistan, when we scrutinize upon the relationship between these nations, Pakistan gifted 5,000 miles of its own territory to China in order to put a check upon the Indian paramountcy. Even Russia is also following the communist type of ideology. China is also following the communist type of ideology. But both of the nations have got skirmishes for more than 30 years. Because Russia wanted to establish itself as a communist empire among the nations of the world, for which China, it has raised against Soviet Union. And it just want to create itself to establish as a communist power among the nations of the world. So the global rule in the 21st century, it is a question mark. Now, even we had witnessed in the year 2008 that almost 13 banks in United States of America, they were bankrupt and closed. When banks in United States of America were closed, India and China were performing very well in the 2008 financial crisis, because India was not at all affected and even China was not at all affected. So I will consolidate my own views in the final part. That is, Speaking about the democratic type of governance and compared with the communist type of governance, in terms of economical level, the Communist Party of China for the past 100 years, and it has performed very well when compared with the democratic type of nations. Please have a read an article published in Sunday, and it said that the authoritarian regimes are performing very well than the democratic, so-called democratic type of governance. Even authoritarianism, democracy, the father of political science and the father of political philosophy, Plato and Aristotle, were dead against the democratic type of governance because we are counting the heads in democracy. And we should not give utmost rights to all the people, and the people, they never value the right to voting or the participation in political activity. And I'm not saying that authoritarianism is the best type of governance, but compared to the democratic type of governance, as the practical experiences and the events which shaped and reshaped the world events, we can observe that authoritarianism or authoritarian type of governance in China, it has performed well. The global leadership, coming to global leadership, whether China can rule over the nations of the world. When we observe another communist nation, Union Soviet Socialist Republic, which has started communist revolution in the year 1917, because it has withdrawn from the First World War due to the communist revolution in USSR. So it took around 7 decades, 7 decades for Russian disintegration. And communism as a principle, as an ideology, in practice, as a power, as a ruling party, now it has passed, it has evolved for the past 100 years, and that itself is considered, should be considered as a victory for the Communist Party of China. And 100 years, and who knows about that, maybe in the next coming 10 years or 20 years or within 5 years, maybe other nations combine themselves in order to check out the communist nation, because since communism as an ideology, as a type of the government, it is curtailing the liberty of the people. And even as I said earlier in my session, they are also censoring the websites and Googles and mail IDs of all the people of China. And it also spoils the privacy of Chinese people, because Chinese, they themselves feels that the government is censoring all this information, and we could not spread out, we could not propagate their own ideas of privacy to other people. So a government which curtails the liberty of its own subjects, definitely it will not survive any long in the period. So we need the global leadership. Also, we can. I have just after this limited reading, I have also considered India as a superpower. Whether India can become a superpower or it will capture the superpower status, because so many leaders of the Congress Party, they said that India is not at all a country, but it is an idea. So what is the need of the world? Whether the world needs superpower, whether the world needs communist powers, whether the world needs liberal powers, and to my knowledge, with my limited reading and limited knowledge, I can say that the world needs ideal powers, which is unpractical. And at last, I can say that the world needs consensual power. The world doesn't need superpowers, ideal powers, or some other thing. The world needs consensual power in which the major countries, the developed countries and underdeveloped countries and developing countries, they should put their heads for the sake of, because we should keep aside the polity of all the nations. And we should give utmost priority for the economical development that must be holistic to all the nations. Nowadays, the countries, the Western powers and also the developing nations, underdeveloped nations, they are spending, they are allotting defense budget at a high level. And United States of America is spending around $700 billion for its defense preparation. And China around $400 billion, and India only $64 billion. Okay, so in case if these kind of a defense expenditure is spent for the welfare of all the people in a particular country, definitely be it a communist country or a democratic country or a theocratic country, it doesn't be matter. Okay, so the country with any type of governance, if it concentrates upon the welfare of the people, and definitely that type of governance, that type of the government, that type of the political party, certainly it needs. So with this, I conclude my speech, and the debates and the discussions of the bedrock of democracy said by Amartya Sen, and any clarifications, any observations, I welcome. Thank you. Thank you, one and all, for this wonderful opportunity to be with you.
Dear participants, on behalf of the organizers of this webinar, we express our heartfelt thanks to Dr. Senthil Kumar. Sir, your lecture touched isolated economy, especially bellwethership and strategies in PRC, comparing democratic and communist regimes, etc. Sir, thank you so much, sir. The lecture was so interesting, informative, and thought-provoking, sir. Sir, with your permission, shall we go for discussion, sir?
Yes, please.
We request the participants to raise your hands in the Zoom so that we can allow one by one. So there won't be any confusion like that. So now we can go for the discussion. We request all the participants, the faculty members, and also the research scholars to come forward to have a discussion with the speaker. Krishnan sir, you can get clarification or discussion with the speaker. You can go on, sir.
Yes, sir, please.
Krishnan here, sir.
Yes, sir.
This is China emerging like a superpower right now. The two have post-COVID corona session. Is it that the world body together can join together, do something after, because the corona origin is still now identified, not identified, it's Wuhan, but the working is going on. If it is a lab preparated kind of a thing, then China may face imposition from the world. It may backfire on them. What do you think about that, sir?
Even the World Health Organization, it has got a good relationship with the PRC, and I've read in an article that the World Health Organization also it didn't disclose the information that the virus has got originated in lab. I think now the world organizations and the regional organizations, they are raising hue and cry against PRC, that they found the American government also, they opined, they got evidence that it has started from China. But even if they found guilty, and no nation is having such kind of power to feel China as a guilty nation. And definitely, as per because being a member of United Nations Organization, Security Council as a permanent member, even India is not at all a permanent member of the Security Council. But whether other countries, other Western powers, other permanent members of the Security Council will impose sanctions against China, it is a major question mark, because if you touch upon the PRC, it will create a great havoc, since the major power, United States of America, more number of Chinese people, they are working for the upgradation of American economy. So it is vice versa. Definitely, it will create a drastic and a dramatic and precarious impact upon the American economy. See, when we search the imposition of a sanction, be it economic or other sanctions, United States of America is the sole superpower which has got influence or authority to impose sanction against any nation. But definitely, as per my reading, America will not involve in it to impose the sanctions. And if it is imposed sanction in the sense, it will definitely be retaliated. And that is what my approach.
Thank you, sir.
Narmada, now you can go for your question.
Yes, sir. Good morning to all. Yes, sir. It was a nice presentation, and I have one question. Like right now, we could see that top scholars, like people are having an agitation towards communism. So, what is your perspective on the survival of communism in the respective world?
So people, see, among the nations of the world, United States of America is the sole nation which has introduced so many policies, including containment policy and Marshall Plan. And between 1945 to 1991, there is a ideological war between the nations. Nations which follow communism as an ideology under the leadership of USSR, and the nations which follow democratic governance under the leadership of United States of America. So two blocks. Okay, it is a bipolar. And even the first Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, he wanted to introduce or establish a socialist ideology when we got freedom, and so many leaders in the Indian national movement, they raised their voice against the socialist ideology. And in Vietnam and a number of southeastern part, the communism as an ideology, they established, they propagated, and even in East European countries, they introduced the ideology of communism. But Narmata, for your observation, communism as such an ideology which is stipulated in the DOS capital, it was not at all introduced or happened. Even in PRC, the cultural revolution spearheaded by Mao Zedong, and it has not involved proletariats as such written by Karl Marx. Okay. But it was involved by peasants. So with millions of people and peasants, under the leadership of Mao, they walked around the Red Army. The Red Army, it is called as the Red Army. They walk around 7,000 to 8,000 miles. Okay, it was I mean to say that the communism, whatever is we speak about communism in the 21st century, whether real communism is followed in any country, definitely it is not at all. And it is not at all possible. Because communism, the underlying assumption of the introduction of ideology of communism is the proletariat revolution. It never happened in the annals of the world history, any nation. Okay, you take any nation, no nation has strictly followed the proletariat revolution. Okay, it never happened. And in China also, it is only the peasants. In Russia, to some extent, they followed. They followed in the sense under the leadership of Lenin. But after the introduction of a communism as an ideology, that rule of a communism party, only at the political level, the ideology was followed, implemented, and not at economical level. Because economical level, in the sense, land has to be distributed equally, resources has to be distributed equally, and no leadership should be there. Marx never advocated for the sole leadership of a country. He advocated for the rule of proletariats or workers. Workers, they have to rule for a short span of time, and until the distribution of resources equally to all the people. See, suppose in case India consists of 1.3 billion population. This 1.3 billion population, the resources of India, be it natural resources or financial resources or organic resources, whatever it may be, the resources which are abundant or which are prevailing in India, it must be distributed equally to all the people. Okay, 10 acres in the sense every citizen of India should be getting 10 acres. So whether these policies were implemented, whether equal distribution implemented in any country, if you scrutinize China, if you scrutinize USSR, if you scrutinize in Cuba, nowhere in the nations of the world it was implemented. So as such, that the communism is an utopian faith, but it is a wonderful ideology that has to be implemented with some reformations. Like Indian constitution, it has to be rectified on accordance with the 21st century, with the changing period of different phases. Likewise, we have to make some changes. Most importantly, the revolution as a mode of change that has to be deleted. Okay, that has to be derided, and everything should be evolutionary. So anything which is on the basis of weapons, on the basis of the bullets, as stated by Mao, definitely it will not be long lasting. Russia took 7 decades for its disintegration, and China is waiting for that.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
The next participant, Arularasi Pandian, you can go for a question, please.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Aishwarya and I'm studying 8th standard. And I would like to ask a question. Do you think the Communist Party in our India is a failure? And if you think it is, then why so, sir? That is my question.
So I feel very much happy of a question asked by 8th standard student. Thank you, Aishwarya. What's your name? Aishwarya.
Yes, sir. Aishwarya.
Very good, very good. Fantastic.
Thank you, sir.
How many scholars? Okay, fantastic. So communism, definitely it is not, its road towards victory is a failure in India. Okay, that is an established fact. But in, when we look upon the villages, mostly we could observe the people from the Communist Party, they are down to earth and they will do all kind of welfare. But they could not capture the government, or they could not capture the power. The reason is simple, that those who can come up very well, or those who wants to capture the power, they are from the upper class. Almost they are from the upper class. If you, Aishwarya, want to become a prime minister or president of
Yes,
India,
sir. I want to become a president of India.
Congratulations, my hearty
Thank you,
wishes.
sir.
Okay. So definitely you must be having power, be it money or otherwise in a different way. Okay, in a different way. Money is essential in a country for a normal citizen to become a part of the helm of affairs. Exceptional cases are there. Okay, President Abdul Kalam, being from the poor family, he has become the president of this subcontinent, and exceptional cases are there. But communism as an ideology, it has failed. It was defeated. It was even submerged, or whatever it may be the term you can use it. It is because the main gamut is there. Click. I just want to say the word click. CLIQUE. Click in the sense, suppose in a country for economical policy or political policy or whatever it may be the policies, it will be framed, it will be implemented by a handful of people. Mostly the people who captures power, the people who wants to be a participant of the government, they must be helped by the business class people. Okay, so business without the support of the business class people or vested interest or rich community who decides the destiny of a particular nation. This is not only the happening or the reason of the defeat of Communist Party in India, but anywhere in the world. Okay, anywhere in the world, Mao, he has won, Lenin, he has won. Those are all the exceptional cases. See, among 195 countries, only 3 or 4 countries are there at present in the 21st century who are following the communist form of governance. Rest of the nations, they are following the democratic type of governance only. Because communism as an ideology which involves in the plucking of properties. Okay, it is to grab the properties and money from the richer class people. And no rich people will allow or give his own property for the sake of communist victory. Remember, okay. And almost this is what happening in number of countries. And even the communism as an ideology, as a government, as a type of governance, why it is defeated. The reason may also be cited United States of America, we can say, because Glasnost and Perestroika were the policies, liberalized policies that were introduced by Gorbachev, the former president of Soviet Union. And immediately the Soviet Union was disintegrated. And so many scholars, they were of the opinion that Gorbachev himself is a friend of United States of America. Because Gorbachev was given Nobel Peace Prize Award in the aftermath. Okay, so reasons are so many, and you must be, Aishwarya, you must be reading in Tamil one book is that, I think, ஒரு பொருளாதார அடியாளின் வாக்குமூலம் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு ஒரு புக் இருக்கு. It is written by Perkins. Okay, Perkins அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு. Even you can read also about dollar diplomacy அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு ஒரு புக் இருக்கு. Dollar diplomacy. It is written by Raghavan. Okay, one Tamil writer. And if you read those things, you can come to an understanding that why communism defeated. It is because of the, simply I can say that it is because of the vested interest or business class people. The communism was not at all, it was not at all attaining its own victory. It is because of the business class people who never allowed communism as an ideology of governance.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, sure. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks and best wishes for the future Prime Minister Aishwarya. And I think now we can move to the next participant, Mr. Shaukat Ahmed Dar. You can go with your question.
Shaukat.
Sir, good morning, sir.
Ah,
Good morning. I am Dr. S.S. Ramajayam, working as a guest lecturer in the Department of History, Government Arts College, Dindivanam.
Okay.
Sir, what are the main contribution to the formation of Chinese Communist Party by the Mao Zedong?
contributions in the sense, yeah, I got it. I got it. Ah.
His main contribution to formation of communist China and the Republic China.
Yes.
What are
PRC.
the main factor in and around China and neighborhood countries?
Yes. So actually, communism got victory in People's Republic of China, and that itself is a victory of Mao Zedong. And it is because of Mao Zedong, his cultural revolution, his formation of party, and the peasant uprising, his formation of the group of peasants. It is because of Mao only communism is now existing in PRC. Okay, and contributions in the sense he fought a heavy battle against Chiang Kai-shek. Chiang Kai-shek, who belongs to Kuomintang Party or Nationalist Party, and both these communist parties and Kuomintang Party, they formed their own alliances in order to check out the Japanese invasion. This is one part. Okay, this is one part. And coming to Mao's contribution, because Mao never believed in democracy. And it is by bullets and not by ballots. Okay, it is by bullets, not by ballots. We can create a change in a country. But when we scrutinize upon Mao's policies, be it a cultural revolution or 100 Flaws, which received criticism among the people, or otherwise a great leap forward. Great leap forward, it is a failure. Okay, and the Great Leap Forward, he has followed the concept of planning from the former Soviet Union, erstwhile Soviet Union. Okay, but in China, it was not at all a success. So contributions in the sense, China as a country, as a nation, People's Republic of China, it stood in a unique manner among the nations of the world. So people who got the disbelief against the communist ideology, they just witnessed China as a communist nation, as a winning nation among all the nations. Because in democracy, there was poverty, there was illiteracy in during those periods, illiteracy and whatnot. So many factors, so many negative factors, they thrive in different nations. But communist China, it performed very well. But when we compare Mao Zedong to Deng Xiaoping, the next president of PRC, under the liberalized policies of Deng Xiaoping, China performed very well. Okay. Mao introduced, established communist party in China, which was moved to the next stage by Deng Xiaoping. That's all we can say. If China is a communist nation right now, successfully, if it is running, if it is performing in the global order, it is because of Mao. Okay, that itself is a contribution of Mao Zedong. ரெட்டை கோபுரங்கள் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு ஒரு புக் இருக்கு தமிழ்ல. Please have a reading. ரெட்டை கோபுரங்கள்.
Raukat, you can go with your question.
Good morning, everyone.
Please.
My name is Shaukat, research scholar of public administration from Anamala University, sir.
Please.
Sir, my question is, why did people fear communism? What specifically is about communism that people feared? Is socialism really that bad?
Okay, take Shaukat, for example. Communism is an ideology
Okay,
which strongly supports the cause of equality.
okay,
So if Shaukat is performing very well and Sendil Kumar is performing in a substandard way, definitely Shaukat will not be in the winning path, or he may not be allowed to gain a property or assets under the communist governance. The talents and personal capacity, it will not be striving towards success in the communist countries. Whereas it is possible, it is permitted to be the capacity a person, if a person wants to utilize his capacity to come up very well, or for economical development, social development, he can be coming up very well in the liberal atmosphere. Shaukat can become a very rich man, not in communist country, but in democratic country, in a capitalistic. And this is what the people are fearing. See, the government is anywhere in the nations of the world, the government is controlled by business class people. Okay, business class people. Business class people, they decide the destiny of a particular nation or a government. In case if I'm a rich man having more than 50,000 crores or 1 lakh crores, I can change a policy that is going to be made in the parliament by just making a single call to the minister concerned. And this is not possible in the real communist nations. Okay. See, as I said earlier, that those nations in China and Russia, they are following at a political level only, not at economic level. Even some 2-3 years back, a Chinese military general in Beijing, and he has got a wash basin, okay, wash basin made up of gold wash basin. Okay.
Mhm.
Wash basin in which we used to spit, okay, and it is made up of gold. And the military general, former military generals, they are also having the gold worth of crores and crores. A statue, Mao's statue, were there in the houses of a military general, former military generals of the PRC. Okay, then where is communism? So communism, why people are fearing, in the sense, if Shaukat has got 10 acres, in the sense, that's all finished. He will not come up, he will not earn crores and crores of rupees by utilizing his capacity for the economical development in communist banner. That is why people are fearing communism should not be allowed. Communism cannot be practiced at all. The 5 fingers, okay, the 5 fingers, whether all fingers are equal, whether all people are equal, okay, in terms of capacity, in terms of talent, in terms of work, they differ. I'm not discussing about a religion, caste, or color, or creed. Even people are giving utmost priority and consideration upon caste, creed, color, and religion, and that is what the world. Okay, but I speak about talent and capacity. If a person is having talent and capacity, and if he wants to earn more, definitely it is not at all possible under the communist banner. That is why people are fearing against, they are raising a hue and cry against the communist ideology. Got it?
Thank you so much, sir.
Sir, thank you, sir. One more clarification. Sir, what are the main contribution to participate in the Washington Conference to formulation of the strong Communist Party in China?
Repeat the question.
Sir, what are the main contribution to participate in the Washington Conference to shape of the communist China?
Washington Conference in the sense?
What?
I could not get.
Washington Conference was held at, in USA.
Hmm.
So many countries participated in the conference in the discuss the world affairs in the
Okay.
1940s.
Okay.
What are the main role played by China?
No, already China as a communist country, in different countries and in different summits, it has made its own ideological propagation in these events and summits. Okay, it has made it just a communist China. It wants to spread its own tentacles to other countries like now North Korea is a communist country which is being supported by PRC, whereas it is very much opposed by United States of America. Russia is also supporting North Korea, whereas United States of America is supporting the cause of South Korea. Okay, so the summits and the events or the happenings, these are all the places or forums in which the communist political party, the government, they utilize these forums to propagate the ideas and ideology of communism. As I said earlier, though the Washington conference and other summits, those are all the forums in which the leaders of different communist powers, they established, they just shared their own ideas related with the communism. But you see, Ramjain, the world powers, they never allow communism to establish itself. See, for example, so many countries were bifurcated on the basis of ideology of communism. If in East European countries, now almost all the East European countries, they converted themselves from communist governance to democratic governance. Okay, so they know very well that the liberty is more important than equality. Okay, equality by evolutionary thinking, by evolutionary ideology itself, we may not expect equality in this world, even at the organic level or at the evolutionary level. Okay, so this is what my point.
Thank you, sir. Now we request the participant, Mr. Saindalavi, to go with this question.
Hello, good morning, sir. Is it audible?
Audible,
audible, sir.
Yes, yes, you are audible, sir.
Okay, good morning, sir.
Please,
I am Saidalavi from Kerala, doing PhD under Dr. R. Murthy in Political Science Department, Annamalai University. This program very thought-provoking and very useful and informative. Thank you. Especially the presentation is very, very, very interesting, sir. Sir, I have to get a clarification. In our, you related to China, nearly there was a policy of the population policy, one child for one parent. Then they changed it to 2 children for one family. Then again, they are liberal to change their population policy to having any children to a family. But in India, as we know, Yogi Adityanath government in UP implemented the limiting the 2 children for a family, curtailing more than 2 children to a family. Sir, what about the Chinese, this policy of the liberalism of the population policy? I want a clear, brief explanation.
I don't want to answer for your previous thing, that is UP Yoginath, the chief minister.
Okay, sir, Yogi, I mentioned only as a debating matter.
Okay,
sorry, sir.
Okay.
Anyhow,
no problem, no problem.
Okay.
But the policy of China now, when we estimate the population policy of the PRC, compared also with India, and almost they control the population. because they realized that the population is the cause for poverty and underdevelopment in the majority of the countries, and including China. Between 1761 to 1841, there was a double rate of increase in the population. Okay. Double rate of increase in the population, and that is why they found that the population is the cause for underdevelopment, and that is why they introduced and almost they controlled their own population. They control their own population, and as per the prediction in the articles which is published in the area of population studies, in the year 2025, India is going to outbeat China as the most populous country in the world. Now the population of China is 1.4 billion and India has got 1.3 billion population. So 2025, we are going to outsource People's Republic of China. And I do not know because whether we are going to implement effective policy to control the population unless and otherwise we could not become a superpower or a member of the permanent permanent member in the Security Council. Okay. So population policy, as per my observation, it has to be regulated. Okay, it has to be regulated. And if we put a strict imposition or stringent rules and regulations, it is not all. It will be against the wishes of the people. That's okay. It must be. It may be regulated. Okay, awareness and the sensitization programs that can be propagated, published throughout the country to regulate the population. That's it.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Very informative. Thank you, sir.
We thank the speaker wholeheartedly and all the participants for such a lively discussion. And I think we can wind up this session, and we request all the participants to join in the same Zoom link this afternoon, exactly at 2:55 p.m. The resource person for the afternoon session is Dr. Biswajit Mahapotra, Associate Professor, Department of Political Science, Northeastern Hill University, Shillong. The title of the lecture is The Centenary of Chinese Communist Party and China's Rise. So we request all the participants to join with us exactly at 2:55 p.m. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.